In this lesson, we are going to be walking through when to use VLANs in your network install, as well as how to configure VLANs on your S8MPD switch user interface. First, when should VLANs be used on a network installation? Typically, for a larger network install, using VLANs would be highly recommended for segmenting the network traffic and to remove the likelihood of having any latency issues for those latency-sensitive devices. A good example of this would be your VoIP phones, because if they're not given the necessary priority, then your client may end up with crackling noises or static on the other end of the phone. Also, during audio or video streaming, you want to try and keep these devices from continuously buffering, which may require having them configured for a different VLAN. Now, things that will not require any sort of networking priority are going to be devices such as computers and printers. Therefore, if an installation is only going to have computers, a printer, and an IP camera, then VLANs will not necessarily have to be on your network, and you can have a flat network, which is otherwise known as a single VLAN network, because that would work just fine. Now, the following is going to be my port configuration for my network. So port 1 is my uplink port from my router. Port 8 is going to be my access point that will have multiple SSIDs tagged with different VLANs, including VLAN 6 for my guest network SSID. Ports 2 through 4 will need to be configured for VLAN 2. This is where my IP cameras will be connected. And ports 5 and 7 will need to be configured for VLAN 3. This is going to be my control system devices. Now, please keep in mind that the only devices that are able to be configured across multiple VLANs but still communicate to one another are going to be those that send out unicast and or multicast messaging. If a device is going to communicate using broadcast messaging, then it will not be able to communicate across VLANs. If this happens, be sure to have your hardwired computer or wireless client device connected on the same VLAN as that device in order to properly communicate to it. Now I'm going to add my VLANs and configure my ports on my switch for my devices. But first, I need to make sure I know when to set it up as an access port versus when to set it up as a hybrid port. The only devices that will need to be configured as hybrid ports are those that have an interface capable of configuring VLANs, which are going to be your routers, switches, and access points. All the other end-user devices, such as printers, computers, control systems, home automation, they're going to be configured as access ports. The reason is because these devices are not capable of configuring VLANs on their user interfaces. Therefore, they do not need to have any VLANs tagged, but only to be configured for the VLAN which the device will be set. This VLAN is called their default VLAN. Something else to keep in mind when configuring your end-user devices to be set on a specific VLAN, you also need to make sure that their gateway is configured for the VLAN gateway. As an example, for my ports being configured on VLAN 2, I need to place a 192.168.2.1 for my gateway if I'm placing an IP address statically so that it matches the VLAN 2 gateway configured on my router. For VLAN 3, I would need to place a 192.168.3.1 gateway to match the VLAN 3 gateway on my router. Now, if the information is configured incorrectly on the end-user device, the devices will no longer be able to communicate across VLANs as they should be. Also, if the default VLAN is not properly configured on the port, then the device will not be detected on the network as well. Now, to begin configuring the VLANs and the ports on our switch, we need to first navigate to the default IP address of 192.168.1.200 on your web address bar. And then the login is going to either be package P for priority or package V for VLAN. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to navigate to VLAN from the left-hand menu, and we will immediately be able to view the VLAN configuration list, which is displaying the existing VLANs configured on the switch. In this case, there's currently only VLAN 1, but I know I will need to add VLANs 2, 3, and 6 because I will be configuring these VLANs on my network. On this page, we are able to add these additional VLANs by typing the VLAN ID number in the box labeled VLAN ID and click on Add. On the next page, we're going to select which ports we need to have set on this VLAN, including the ports that are hybrid and need to have its VLAN tagged, which are the router uplink port and the access point port. To reiterate, ports 2 through 4 will need to be configured for VLAN 2, and ports 5 through 7 are on VLAN 3 for the control system. We're going to go ahead and first configure ports 2, 3, and 4 for VLAN 2 by placing a check in the box for ports 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to include our hybrid ports, which are ports 1 and ports 8. Then click Apply. Now that we have been navigated back to the VLAN page, we're going to configure the VLAN 3 ports by first adding VLAN ID 3 and click the Add button. And then place a check in the box for ports 5, 6, and 7. And we're also going to include the hybrid ports 1 and 8, and then click Apply. The final VLAN to add will be VLAN 6 for our hybrid ports, since we need to have our VLAN 6 guest network available. So we will add VLAN ID 6, click on the Add button, and place a check next to ports 1 and 8, and click Apply. And then we will be navigated back to our VLAN page. Now the last step is going to be clicking the Port Config button and verify that for our access ports, the default VLAN should be displayed so that any device hardwired to a configured port will receive an IP address for that VLAN. So for ports 2, 3, and 4, we need to have VLAN 2 being displayed. And for ports 5, 6, and 7, we want to have VLAN 3 being displayed. Now for our hybrid ports 1 and 8, we need to verify that the PVID column shows one of the dropdown, and that we're able to view the remaining VLANs if we click the drop-down arrow for those ports. The reason why 1 is being displayed for ports 1 and 8 under the PVID column is because this is the default VLAN for the router and access point. Now we need to place a check in the VLAN Aware Enable checkbox for ports 1 and 8. By doing so, this allows for the VLANs in the drop-down box to be tagged for these ports. Once the necessary selections have been made, we can click Apply. And now we're navigated back to the VLAN page and our switch configuration is complete. Thank you for walking through configuring VLANs on an S8MPD user interface.